Hello, everyone. With great pleasure, I want to welcome you to our next exciting session, SuperApps, one app to rule them all. Let us welcome on stage the moderator of this session, Vinoliah Martin, client executive at Microsoft, who will introduce her panel. Vinoliah, the stage is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And I see the audience are still sleeping. Are you with us? Everybody is like, should I clap or shouldn't I clap? But good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion today, where we will be focusing on the rise of super apps in Africa. Now, I'm sure there's some of you are thinking, okay, so what exactly are super apps, right? And we hear quite a bit about that today from our experts on the stage. But think about it as a web or a mobile application that hosts a wide variety of products and services in one single platform. So it's like your one-stop shop to cater for a variety of your needs, and really just one app to rule them all. And our panelists here with me today are experts in the industry, and they will share with us some of the challenges, some of the complexities, and also some insights on how you can build and also really market those super apps on the African continent. Now, we all know that Africa is a very interesting and a very unique landscape, which also comes with a variety of challenges. And today we will unpack some of those. And with that, I would like to now welcome our panelists and each one of them to just introduce themselves.
Hi, Vinoliah. Thanks so much. My name is Marco Torrente. I've been now in South Africa for the last 7 years. I'm currently leading all the activities related to marketing, digital experience for the Vodacom Financial and Digital Services Group. And the beauty or the opportunity I had was to actually design, take to market and scale currently Vodapay. That is what we consider our super app in the Vodacom Group.
Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gour Lentell. I have a long history in the tech industry and internet for the last 25 plus years. For context, I was born and grew up in Zimbabwe, went to the UK after high school, and 12 years later emigrated to Sydney, Australia. I've been back in South Africa for the last 6 years and have come to realize that I'm African at heart. So it's been great reconnecting with my heritage here. I'm the founder, co-founder and CEO at the Datafree group, which is underneath which we have two businesses. Datafree is a B2B software platform to manage and implement mobile network reverse build data services. We call that making things data-free, but it basically means users don't need data in terms of their SIM balance to use a data-free service. Whilst living here, I had the idea for Moya app after spending some time in Cape Town, where I lived initially, and through some research came to realize that people in this part of the world have a very low propensity to install apps on their phone. The number one reason being there's often no space on the phone. Number two is data costs. And really, people need a very good reason to install an app on their phone due to those issues. And when we did this research, we found out that the one app everyone had was WhatsApp, but of course you need a data bundle for WhatsApp. So we, as an experiment, developed Moya app with data-free messaging. It took off, and then we added a whole variety of services to make it a super app, if you like. And here we are today.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Shaheen. I'm completely born and bred in South Africa. I spent most of my time in Cape Town. I've spent 15 years in banking and insurance, and I now look after payments, value-added services, and rewards at ayoba.
Great, thank you. So now that everyone knows the audience, let's maybe go into some questions, right? And Gour, let's start with you. So from your perspective, how do super apps in Africa balance providing convenient and affordable financial services to mobile users while also addressing some of those infrastructural challenges, like internet connectivity and limited access to banking services, particularly in those remote and rural areas?
Well, there's probably half a dozen answers or themes to that to answer that question. As I said earlier, it's very, very difficult as a builder of digital services via apps to actually get installed on the phone. So, you know, I've lived and drunk the Silicon Valley Kool-Aid. I'm a tech guy. I've, you know, had previous startups that we expanded to America from Australia, so I've been there. And the underlying assumption in the tech industry, if you like, is that once you've built a great product with great services and there's no reason people can't install it and be a user of your app. Not realizing that actually it's really difficult to get an app installed in the first place. So in a sense, that's one of the themes to answer your question about access. You know, just because you have it doesn't mean people will use it. So in that context, actually, is why a super app type model, I think, makes a lot of sense in this part of the world. That one app that does many things is a much easier proposition for end users than lots of apps that do one thing each, and then you don't have space on your phone and data costs, etc. It's a bit difficult for me to answer the broader question about access in you know, rural areas or remote, you know, I wouldn't just say it's rural, it's sort of in townships even. And of course, part of that is about infrastructure and access to network connectivity, etc. But what I often try and make a strong point about is that once access is there, which, you know, actually mobile internet is the most ubiquitous form of internet connectivity in South Africa, certainly in many countries in the region. It's more available than fixed line or Wi-Fi hotspots, etc. The big barrier to then people using online or digital services is the cost of data. Disposable incomes are low and declining given macroeconomic conditions. And, you know, the primary thought in many people's minds is affording the data to get online and use apps or web internet services. And really that's been the theme of what we do, that if you can make things data free, meaning the cost of data isn't billed to the end user, but it's rather paid for by a platform, an app, a banking app, a super app, whatever it is, that can dramatically change the barrier to access. So actually it's of course it's about infrastructure and network connectivity, but in my view, the number one barrier to access online services in this part of the world is the affordability of data.
And thank you for that, and you highlight such an important aspect, right? And I want to come just to Marco around that, specifically the one around inclusion and the access that people have and data being so expensive. So Marco, you know, over the last decade, there has been remarkable progress, you know, in expanding access of financial services to different people across Africa. And if we just think about mobile money platforms, for an example, they've played a transformative role in increasing financial inclusion. But just based on your expert perspective, you know, how can super apps further promote financial inclusion in Africa, and what steps are being taken to ensure that they are available to people not using banks or people who don't have access to banking services?
I think, Vinoliah, the context of each market in Africa is extremely important. And I'll give you an example from our Vodacom group. As you know, we have a super app outside of South Africa called M-Pesa. This was launched 17 years ago in Kenya with a specific use case, money transfer, peer-to-peer. And the reason being was in Kenya, back in the day, there was no high penetration of branches of the different banks. The banking penetration was not high, and that was an opportunity for an outsider now to provide a digital services through USSD and to empower and bring these people in the financial service ecosystem. Now, if I look at today's stats, we have outside of South Africa close to 50 million active users every day or every month, transacting on M-Pesa. And when M-Pesa actually is glitching or is not transacting, we actually receive a call from the Prime Minister in Kenya, because more than 50% of the GDP is actually transacted on M-Pesa. And this brings now an opportunity for the Kenya people and for the rest of Africa. In South Africa, I must say, the market context is very different. Just a second. the banks and insurance industry are actually, I think there is a party also. We're missing out.
We're missing out, right?
Yeah. But in South Africa, what I was saying is that the banking penetration actually is very high. There are close to 80% of the population is banked. And for this reason, we had to think about a different positioning and how to launch a super app in South Africa for the South African consumers. And that's where, if we looked at VodaPay today, VodaPay is a place for the Vodacom consumer that is also zero rated, so they don't consume data. It's a place where now also non-Vodacom customer can purchase any airtime, they can pay the bills, utilities, and this now comes with a convenience of not paying the banking fees, because in this market, unfortunately today, there are a lot of small fees that they are hidden in your income statement at the end of the month when you pay your Netflix subscription and so on and so forth. And I think the opportunity then, as you mentioned, give access. In South Africa, we empower consumer with a digital wallet. We can have consumer from the comfort of their home accessing to this application, applying for a digital wallet. And then if they have cash at home, they can actually go to the nearest store, Vodacom, Pick n Pay, Massmart, and so on and so forth, where they can actually join the digital ecosystem. And now VodaPay, being a super app, an ecosystem of digital solutions, they will be able to access to special rewards, special deals that we have with the likes of KFC, macro builders, and so on and so forth. And I think before, these people possibly didn't have the opportunity, because if you look at the bank value proposition, is a store your value. Possibly I'll give you some loans, but the e-commerce component linked to your banking app is kind of coming only now in place. And that's where we looked at, we call this business model an over-the-top e-commerce player, where VodaPay offer convenience of storing your credentials with your mobile number. You will be able to access to any other third-party store in our ecosystem. And then we innovate on the payment side, because now with VodaPay you can actually pay with your store of value, having cash deposited at the Vodacom stores, or with the buy now, pay later solutions, or with our loyalty and reward scheme. So I think that's really our positioning today in SA with VodaPay, and that's how we believe we can bring possibly the additional 20% of the market within the financial service ecosystem.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing, and the potential and opportunity that lies within that market is absolutely great. So thank you for sharing those insights, Marco. And I want to move to you, Shaheen, and maybe just get your perspective around some of the innovative solutions that are being implemented to address some of the energy and connectivity issues that may hinder the operations of these super apps across Africa.
Thank you. That's a really good question. Gour touched on it earlier when he said that super apps are not really responsible for infrastructure. Toyota doesn't look at the state of the roads before they design a car. They go ahead and they design a car. And in the same way, when I speak about network and electricity solutions, it's not something that we as super apps are doing. It's something that you can read about in the market, and you probably read about it already. And the first thing that springs to mind is Starlink internet, right? If you read it in the paper, you can see that the MNOs are probably partnering with some low Earth orbit satellite companies to provide satellite internet across Africa. Starlink is available in South Africa unofficially and probably not very legally, but people are using it. And we can see that this is happening in Nigeria, Ghana, and probably all across Africa. It is going to be a big thing. If anything, we can speculate whether fiber will be completely taken over with Starlink satellite or low Earth orbit satellite in the same way that copper internet was taken over by fiber. So that's network connectivity. Moving on to electricity and stable electricity. As South Africans, we know once the power goes out, we lose network connectivity again. The only way you can really get away from this is if you get a small power bank to run your router. The price of this has dropped a lot. So this is the innovation we're seeing in Africa as well. There are companies that provide this through financing to make it available, either a solar panel and a battery or just a battery. But this will allow you to get mobile internet at least for that period. And the MNOs are in any event making sure that they are resilient and independent of what we call load shedding or blackouts, as they say in Africa, for that period by adding batteries to the network towers. So this is where we are going factually, and we know where we are now. If you want to become philosophical, you can talk about super apps and the ability of super apps to potentially create network meshes in the future. If there are enough people on ayoba, I could create a hotspot in the same way that iMessage can send messages independently of the networks without charging. I should be able to create a network mesh from my phone, and I can chat to everyone around me, close by me, people nearby me for free, without having to rely on either internet connectivity or electricity. Thank you.
Wow, that's a very powerful answer there. I like how you've brought them all together, and the whole caveat around mesh is so powerful, right? Because that's really where the value lies. Marco, I want to just come back to you for a moment. And you work for one of the most leading telecommunications companies in Africa. And you touched on quite a bit around your operating model and how you guys are really taking super apps into Africa. So just from your expert perspective, right, what role do partnerships between fintech companies and telecommunications providers play within the development and scalability of these super apps that you are taking to market?
I think the opportunity, and this is one very common question we receive very often. Why financial services in a telco? And if you guys look at what a telco has in terms of ecosystem of advantage or capabilities or pillars, a telco today, I think we are very lucky to work within the Vodafone group, being one of the leading brands worldwide. Telco, also in every market, they have usually the largest customer base. So now as a fintech, if you start upselling your device insurance or your funeral cover or your life insurance to a massive base, possibly there is an opportunity. And that's where customer base, I think, for us was a critical foundational capability of why we started launching in 2011 our insurance proposition. The second one is the distribution, because Vodacom, like most of the telco, they have branches and reseller of airtime anywhere in the country. So automatically we are very close to the consumer that possibly they buy and purchase already from us. And from a retail perspective, the idea was, can we now upsell a voucher for utilities or upsell funeral? And then the third one that I mentioned already is the brand. The ability to build a connection and emotion with consumer is extremely important, considering that today in South Africa we have 45 million SIM cards that are actually active. And behind the SIM card there are many millions of customers that they trust us every day with their money for connectivity reason. But now there is one more reason to consume Vodacom. That could be your payment, your transaction, your loans, and so on and so forth. And then finally, guys, I don't know how many of you knows 10,000 things about yourself. But we know, because thanks to the network and thanks to what we call big data, we actually, it's quite scary, but we use it in the right way to create. But just to give you some example, thanks to the network data, today we can offer a better service on a specific route, because we know that specific segment of customers, they actually go from their homes to the offices, and sometimes they get disconnected, and after a few times then we can fix it. Or thanks to the airtime consumption, we can actually build what we call a ranking or a credit score based on airtime for each one of our customers. And it puts us in a position where now we can extend what we call an advance for multiple services, multiple products, at no interest because we don't do lending as Vodacom. But I think those are really some of the opportunity of partnering with a telco that possibly many other financial service players they don't have, and they need to either build or potentially find the right partners for each one of these components.
And you touch on such an important point, and that's data, right? And really leveraging the power of data, as you say, in a responsible and ethical manner, I hope. But there's so much power in getting those insights that you need from data that you can really help with your cross-selling and upselling, as you've so likely mentioned. So now we've touched on quite a number of aspects, and I think there's one key thing, Gour, that you touched on earlier that I think we need to explore just a little bit more, is the adoption of SuperApps. You know, I think an app is like any other technology solution. It's great to have it, but the true value and potential lies, and the benefit lies from leveraging and adopting that app in an effective and an efficient manner. So can you shed some light just on the adoption and the engagement of SuperApps to users?
Good question. There's, you know, if I can go back a step, and it sounds like you spoke earlier today about what is a super app. There's no real definition of what a super app is. It's a phrase often thrown around in the industry, business and tech, that you know, can be not misused, but interpreted in various ways. You know, I think a core principle of a super app is it's one app that does many things and a growing array of things. The key thing, in my view and observation of the markets here and overseas, is that key to adoption of anything that might be regarded as a super app is that first hook. And really a super app ideally needs users to engage regularly, like every day or frequently per day, and that's your starting point. So any super app model needs to, in my view, have clear what that first hook or driver for adoption is. If you get that right and it leads to adoption and viral growth ideally, then you can layer in a whole range of additional services and features. But if you don't have that hook, you're going to struggle. So when I had the idea for Moya app, the hook, if you like, was data-free chat. So like WhatsApp, but no data cost. And that worked remarkably well. We actually, prior to that, had a data-free app for soccer scores. You know, it was a really good app with all the leagues around the world and scores and updates and league tables and so on. But it never really went anywhere. We spent R1 million advertising it when we first launched it. Most of the money went on Google Meta. We got some downloads, but they churned. Not that many users stuck, if you like, as active users. And after 3.5 months spending R1 million, we had 35,000 active users, which in my mind was just, you know, largely a waste of money, and spending it on Google for, you know, which advertises to people with data, with space on their phones, you know, I thought it was a bit of a rip-off, actually. So we stood back and said, this isn't going to work. And there was very little viral growth. After that research I mentioned, we realized that one thing everybody does on their phone in markets that, well, whatever the app is, but in the case of South Africa, everybody uses WhatsApp. Old, young, rich, poor, black, white, whatever. We all use it every day, and we depend on it. And one of the questions we asked in our research was, we verified what we already know, that many people in South Africa regularly have periods of time where they've run out of data. Their data bundle's finished, their WhatsApp bundle's finished. And we asked people, when you have no data, what do you miss the most? And we just categorized it as messaging, social media, search, news, sport, whatever. And overwhelmingly, it was messaging. And I'm sure we've all had experience personally or with people we know, when you've run out of data, or people you know have run out of data, the most frustrating thing is not being able to chat or message. It's so important in our lives. So the conclusion from that was, well, if you're going to make anything data-free, chat messaging must be a number one option. And so we developed Moya app, put it out into the market, no advertising, and within a month we had 100,000 active users in South Africa. And since then it's grown to now 5 million monthly active users with no marketing, not $1 spent on advertising. Compare that to the soccer app where we spent R1 million and got, you know, not a lot. So for us, that's the hook. And there's no one thing that has to be the hook. If you look at SuperApps, there's one in Indonesia, for example, where the initial activity was ride sharing, jumping on the back of scooters, their equivalent to Uber, if you like. And that was the initial take-up of their app, and then they put in a whole variety of other services. In China, with WeChat, originally was chat, and there were circumstances in China at the time that led to rapid adoption of WeChat, and now WeChat is, the global, best example of a super app. So I know with ayoba it's chat, and with VodaPay it's other services, but if you don't have that hook to give people a reason to use your app every day and want it, and spread the word, the chances of success are reduced. So, understanding that dynamic, understanding the challenge of getting an app installed, and a clear focus on providing users with real value, give them a reason to want your app, is the starting point.
And thank you for sharing that strategy. I think for many people, when they start developing an app, so it's one thing to develop it, it's another thing to actually get users going on it. And I particularly like your article that you wrote around this as well. I think it was called the App Challenge in South Africa. So many, the App Install Challenge in South Africa, and it was actually great. And even the numbers and the statistics that you had in there, it's actually fascinating. So for those of you, you need to tell them about the article. They need to go and read it. It's fascinating. Great. Thanks for sharing that, Gour. And I want to move on to Shaheen again. Let's look to the future, right? We've heard quite a bit about some of the challenges, the opportunities in Africa around super apps. When looking to the future, how do you envision the evolution of a super app, and what role, from your perspective, do you think it will play in the broader fintech, companies?
Yeah, so if you think about super apps, and I guess super apps reflect a human trait, and really if you look at that, humans are human, and as we move into Africa, you can see that there's a convergence of apps into things that super apps do. If you draw a Venn diagram over our three companies, you'll see that there's quite a lot of overlap. In fact, I need to keep looking at Gour, because every time he speaks about the company he works for, I think, is he advertising ayoba? The overlap is there, and if you look at other apps, generally speaking, Clicks, as an example, are doing a lot of non-retail things. You can buy data and airtime and pay bills on Clicks. You can buy life insurance on Clicks as well. So you can see that conversion towards super apps. I won't be surprised if we see this with ShopRite, Checkers, Pick n Pay, Woolworths. The only thing they probably won't touch is chat, because that's very specialized, and that's probably reserved for super apps that focus on that. One of the things that I'd like to see going forward, and I hope at my time at ayoba, is making ayoba me quite ubiquitous. Right now, if you go on ayoba, you can send data or airtime or mobile money to anyone, but not through a banking app. You do it as quickly and as easily as sending a message. So if you have someone you would like to bless, or someone who you would like to ask to bless you, you could go on ayoba, you can send a gift to your wife, or to your girlfriend, or to your wife and your girlfriend. And I think this is absolutely what I want across Africa. People saying, hey man, I'm down on money, can you just ayoba me $10, or can you sponsor me some airtime? Please, can you ayoba me $10 of airtime? I hope maybe within 5 or 10 years, this is where we will be.
So the evolution is amazing and very integrated. Marco, what's your view on that?
So my view, if you look at the smartphone and the role that is playing in our life today, is definitely a store. We store our information. We use it for transactional purposes and to be probably entertained. But if you look now at this new wave of technology with the artificial intelligence, I believe probably the future won't require anymore an interface. You can actually chat, and you can have a conversation with your device, for which cannot be, or could not be anymore a smartphone, but could be those old devices that we use back in the 90s or in the 2000s, where there was no screen and distraction and so on and so forth. So I believe definitely that could be one outcome of what a super app could look like. I definitely believe in the nearest future positioning what the social media also play, they've been doing the world in engaging, entertaining our consumers. That's definitely a different perspective on how a super app, or what a super app could become, where there must be a level of engagement so that people are actually entertained, and while you are entertained you can actually transact, you can store data, you can communicate, and so on and so forth. So I think for a consumer with a smartphone there is a bright future ahead, where according to their needs, we can call super app so many different things.
Absolutely, and you can use data to understand also what customer preferences are, so you can give the customers what they need and when they need it. Gour, what's your view on that?
On which point, sorry?
Just the evolution of super apps. How do you see it evolving? And also, how do you see that evolving in the global fintech landscape?
Challenging question. I think the reality is there are very few successful super apps globally. As I said, in business and tech industry, we tend to easily adopt these words and latest trends and so on. And super app is a bit fashionable these days in the last few years. But actually, there are only a handful of really successful super apps globally, let alone in Africa. And there are a variety of reasons for that. I would, here with esteemed colleagues, so we're not here to sort of criticize, but one of the challenges for ayoba, for example, is it's data-free or no data cost on MTN, and it has an MTN bias, which immediately means Vodacom users will be less likely to use it, for example. So, obviously MTN and Vodacom have huge user bases, and there's plenty of success within that. But a true super app, in my view, goes across networks, goes across industries and businesses. It's not just about shopping, it's not just about banking, it's not just about social media or whatever it is. It's blending those things together. And as I said earlier, if you think about what you individually use, which apps on your phone do you use every day or multiple times a day? It's not really a banking app. It's less likely to be a shopping app, because you use those occasionally when you need to and want to use those services. But why do you pull out the phone and look at the 1 or 2 or 3 apps every day? Now, obviously, social media apps are probably the number one there, because people use them all the time. But I suspect WhatsApp is above that. I mean, how many times a day do you take out your phone and look at WhatsApp? You probably can't count. So it's really that hook that I mentioned earlier as the key to then building out a range of services, which can include fintech, retail, content, news, whatever. And then you really have a true super app. And as I said, the number one, or the best example in the world, as far as I'm aware anyway, is WhatsApp, which is incredible, really. So in terms of the evolution, I'm not really sure. Elon Musk has been talking about turning X into a super app. The reality is in America, people don't really need a super app. They've got plenty of data access. They've got expensive phones with lots of storage. They're very used to the app store model, where there's 2 million apps in an app store doing anything you want. And I don't think the need is there in, say, the American market or European even, for a super app. So just because you have the idea and use the word doesn't mean it's going to happen. And it's really going down to basics. What is the value proposition of a super app to any society or country that might lead to it being successful?
And thanks for that. You mentioned there's no opportunity globally, but I think there's lots of potential within Africa to really start looking at that even more. And thanks for that. I'm just going to ask each panelist for some final thoughts that you want to leave the audience with, and some nuggets, final nuggets that they can take with as they think about developing, building, marketing, and adopting these apps.
Yeah, I think I'll leave you with this tagline. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, whether you're in the USA or Europe or anywhere in Africa, ayoba is for you. Thanks.
You're promoting ayoba very prominently there. Well done. Gour, any last thoughts from your side?
I think I've kind of said it. It's, one thing I think I haven't highlighted that we came to slowly learn, actually, and as I said, I'm a tech guy, I've drunk the Silicon Valley Kool-Aid for many years, is a key important thing to do for all of us is to stop for a minute and understand, your market, your consumers, their needs, their challenges. And it's really when we did that with that research in 2 Cape Town townships that the light bulbs went off, because we stopped thinking about our own, great ideas and whatever, and stopped to listen and understand the realities of life out in any market. And it's that insight that led us to ultimately develop Moya app. So, I think that is a fundamentally important thing for any app or any super app trying to make a difference.
Or any business you want to start, right? Because if you don't understand your market, what exactly are you going to sell, and what is your value
But it's
proposition?
astonishing how many people in business and tech do not really understand their market.
I think in many instances those are the executives that give order from the boardroom without knowing anything of what's happening on the ground. But I think that's really, I'm catching on what you just shared, because in order to build a super app, there is a use case that needs to be frequent. We call it a toothbrush use case. Every day you guys brush your teeth, I hope at least two times. And that's where we really try to understand every day how we can create either a new need for a digital service, or understanding your current needs, digitize, make it more seamless from an experience perspective, and possibly more convenient. Because at the end of the day, customer, they will switch from one brand to another because of convenience, and convenience are price, experience, or because of the trust that consumers have with a brand. So that's really my final thoughts.
Very important, and thank you so much for sharing that. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, we've got one here in the front.
Hi, everyone. With all the talk of super apps and fintech, I think the one thing that came to my mind is, you said the app for people to want to download certain things to their phone. Your view on security with regards to apps and smartphones, I think, in my mind, that's many times the reason why a person doesn't want to put an app on their phone, because they think of the security risk behind it, and obviously the data that they're sharing. So how do you kind of smoothen that out for users to say, like, this is why they're safe? Because it's data, right, at the end of the day.
How do you create that peace of mind and that safe space for people? Who'd like to take that one?
I've a little bit mixed views on it. So obviously security is a primary issue everyone should care about, and there's security in terms of being compromised, hacked, and all that sort of thing, but there's also security in the context of the privacy of your information. I've come to realize in my time here that I generally think about the mainstream market, or the mass market, if you like, of South African citizens. So, also getting my head out of the clouds of higher SMM or, social groups. And there is a clear concern amongst people across South Africa, so just use townships as an easy example, about the privacy of their data. They're absolutely concerned about it. And, it's one thing, trust is earned in these environments. You've got to slowly and consistently demonstrate transparency and that you can be trusted, and people will slowly come around to that. But their initial stance on any app on their phone is security is a big issue. And I'd suggest it's more about the privacy of their data rather than their phone being compromised. And it's a tough nut to crack, and just because you say don't worry to people doesn't mean they'll listen to that. It's a question of, in my view, being transparent with users is a really important thing, and we've learned that with Moya app. A lot of people here are kind of used to being, one of the things, I'll give you an example. When we first launched Moya app with Datafree chat, a primary theme of user feedback was, what's the catch? There's a trick. This can't be real. Because it's never happened in their lives, that something is genuinely free or data free, because there's always a catch. And some of the biggest brands in this country are the worst at it, actually. They spout off, all this reassuring stuff, and everyone knows that there's a catch. You just have to find it. So being transparent, and if if there's negative things to say it to people. Be honest about it. You know, we can't do this, whatever this thing is. The more transparent and honest you are, the quicker you earn that trust from a user community and therefore confidence in the privacy of their data, etc. And it's, I don't think there's an easy answer to it. You've just got to be honest, transparent, straightforward, and demonstrate that you can be trusted.
And build a secure app. So that's important. Great, we are out of time. Thank you so much, everybody. This is our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.